Okay, so your two ways of saying hello are bonjour and salut. You can also use the word salut means hey. Bonjour is good day or hello. Salut is more like hey. And then you have the, you can also just, anytime you, like if you're walking down the hall and you see somebody, you're like, hey man, how's it going? You can just say, it's going? Yeah, it's going. And you remember that from the other one? Ça va. That's two words. This right here is ça va. So how do we make this C into an S sound? Put that little hook on it and it almost looks like an S. C'est dire. And now we have ça va. And literally the French English of this is it goes. And it's just a very informal, you can walk by, ça va? Ça va. Oui, ça va. It's going? Yeah, it's going. So those are your hellos. And then you have your goodbyes, and then they also kind of follow along the same lines. So you have, now you've heard people say this, au revoir, and no. This is au revoir. It almost sounds like two syllables, au revoir, even though it's actually three, au revoir. And you will hear a much more professional speaker say au revoir. But generally people just say au revoir. And that means literally until I re-see you, until I see you again. And it's used to say goodbye. And then you have salut. You can say, once again, salut for goodbye. So it's like, hey, bye, salut, salut. Alright? And then ça va is one of those you can also use again. Ça va, ça va. And then the last one that you will see is, and you'll hear it in France, believe it or not, is ciao, ciao. And that's actually Italian, but the French do use that because there are parts of France that are very, very close to Italy. And so those merge a bit. And then there are parts of France that are close to Germany, and that merges sometimes. And then there are parts that are close to Spain, and that merges as well. But these are your hellos and your goodbyes. So, for instance, if you've got two people talking, you may say bonjour, bonjour, comment allez-vous? Bien, merci. Comment allez-vous? Bien. Au revoir, au revoir. Okay, so you should have understood the bonjour and the au revoir in that, but what was all that stuff in the middle? Okay, well that's how you ask someone how they are doing, but in French you actually ask them how they are going. In English it's how are you, and in French it's how go you. And that's coming up in the next part of the lesson. But for right now we're just going to stick with the hellos and goodbyes, and the my name is, and which is actually I call myself. And then you ask somebody, how do you call yourself? And so you have, I call myself, which is je m'appelle. Je means I. Je m'appelle. Remember, I myself call, because that comes before the verb. And then you have, il s'appelle. And elle s'appelle. And one of these words may look familiar to you, and it's probably this one, Elle. And that's the name of a woman's magazine, and Elle actually means she. So all those people that are walking around with the name Elle, and they think it's all cute, it's great. It means she. So, il obviously means he. So this is he calls himself, she calls herself. And those are the same, don't worry about that. And the reason that you have apostrophes here is because when the French put two words next to each other, and especially if one of those words is very short, like two letters short, and ends in an E, when they put that next to another word, they're going to just get rid of that extra E. So this actually has an E there, and that's how you say himself and herself. But because it's right next to that A, if you pronounce that appelle, it doesn't work, so they just squish them together. So you have s'appelle. So you have il s'appelle, he calls himself, and elle s'appelle, she calls herself. Je m'appelle, I call myself. And then you will probably remember the comment t'appelles-tu, and t'appelles-tu. Where'd my black marker go? Tu t'appelles. And I may have messed up on the L's in there. But tu t'appelles means you call yourself. Alright? And then when we phrase it in the question, this actually came at the end. That's a whole different thing. So, je m'appelle, I call myself. Tu t'appelles, you call yourself. Il s'appelle, he calls himself. Elle s'appelle, she calls herself. So, and then if I want to introduce you to somebody, I'm going to say je te présente. Now, this is the same thing, just remember that that's a consonant. So I can't squish those and put an apostrophe there, it's not going to work. That's a vowel. That's when I would do that, alright? So I present to you whoever it may be. So, je te présente mon ami. I present to you my friend. I'll introduce you to my friend. Once again, if I look up the word introduce, I introduce in French, on like that free translation, I wouldn't get this. This is a completely different language. It is not English with French words, okay? So, we've got bonjour, which means good day, salut, which means hey, ça va, which means it goes, and then on the other end of this, I've got au revoir, which means goodbye. I can say salut again, which means bye, and I can also say ça va for ça va, it goes, yes, it goes, and then I could even say ciao, which means goodbye in Italian. So, when you introduce yourself to someone in French, you also shake hands a little bit differently than the English do. And the French are also going to dress a little differently than Americans. In America, we tend to be much more relaxed with our clothing, and we don't really have a problem wearing bright colors and all this kind of stuff. And all of the French are really known for their fashion, but generally speaking, most of the French people are going to wear darker colors. They're going to be a little more tailored. You're generally not going to see a lot of teenagers with like just gym shorts and t-shirts running around with the little flip-flop sandals. That's just not the way that they do things. And it's not so much of a conservative as that's just the way they've always done it, and that's just their culture. The French also are going to speak much quieter than Americans do. And this is true for most European people. And you can think of it like in Europe, they don't have a whole lot of space. France is the size of Texas. Their entire country is the size of just Texas. So you can think of it, okay, well, they don't have a lot of space, so in their minds, in their concept, I don't need to yell to speak to somebody. That person's generally going to be pretty close. And when in conversation, a French person will generally stand a little closer to you than most Americans will. In America, our bubble is much, much bigger, and we have more land, so you can think of it like that. And then in France, their bubbles are smaller, they talk quieter, they're a little more tailored in their dress, a little darker, a little more subdued. It's not a depressed thing, it's just the way they do it. So, and then when you shake hands with somebody in France, in America, you know, it's that vigorous up and down, how you doing, man? But in France, it's just one firm final handshake and you're done. The other thing that you're going to see people do in France is they will kiss each other on the cheek. Girls will kiss girls on the cheeks, girls will kiss guys on the cheeks, guys will kiss girls on the cheeks. Guys normally don't kiss other guys on the cheek unless they're very good friends or they're family. And the number of kisses, or baisers, that the French use alternates generally between 2 and 4. Keep it kind of balanced, but and you actually don't kiss their cheek. You're gonna kiss. It's like you touch their cheek and you kiss air. You know, don't spread those germs. But and that's just very, very common. And you generally probably will not do this when you meet someone for the first time, but after you've known them for a couple of times, then yeah, absolutely not a problem. So I've got a volunteer with me, and we are going to go through a brief little conversation. Now, he knows as much French as you do, if not just a little bit less. So bear with him, and here we go. Je te présente Greg. I present to you Greg. All right? Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Let's see. Je m'appelle Shandy. Comment t'appelles-tu?
Je m'appelle Greg.
Good. Il s'appelle Greg. He calls himself Greg. And so if he were to say she calls herself Shandy, how would you do that? Because I'm a girl.
Il s'appelle Shandy.
Good. Good. So je te présente Greg. And now you present me.
Je te présente Shandy.
Very good. So now if we were just introducing ourselves, I might say, Bonjour, je m'appelle Shandy. Comment t'appelles-tu? And he would say, Bonjour, je m'appelle Greg. Now notice, when we shook hands, that was it. Firm, good handshake. You always want a firm handshake. You don't want a wet noodle. People, it just doesn't work. It doesn't transfer. You always want to get a good, firm handshake. People will remember you that way. If you look at somebody in the eye when you shake their hand and you say their name, they will remember you. I guarantee it. And with a firm handshake, not a wet noodle. Okay, so one of those. And now notice, I'm standing pretty far away from him. Now in France, we would probably be a little more like this. It's a closer thing. So now, Greg and I have known each other for a long time. So now when I see him, I'm not going to shake his hand anymore. We're going to walk up to each other. Now, if we've known each other for a while, we're probably not going to say hello and goodbye every time, like bonjour, au revoir. We're probably going to be more like salut or ça va. And so we're going to stick with ça va, okay? And the word yes is oui in French, O-U-I, oui. So I will say ça va, and he'll say oui, ça va. It's going? Yeah, it's going, all right? And also, we're going to kiss each other. We're going to press our cheeks to each other, but kiss the air. And since we've known each other a while, we'll do this 4 times instead of just 2, all right? So we're on the street, we see each other. Greg, ça va?
Oui.
Ciao.
Ciao.
And off we go. So that's basically the introduction, a quick little goodbye, how you say your name. Je m'appelle, I call myself. Tu t'appelles, you call yourself. Il s'appelle, he calls himself. Elle s'appelle, she calls herself. Je te présente, I introduce to you, or I to you present. And then you have bonjour, salut, ça va. Don't forget this is 1, not, yeah, it's going great. Because if you do that, people are going to go 1. Okay, American. Au revoir, salut, ça va, and ciao.